Good morning. I like this table in the front. My name is Michael Naft. I'm your Clark County Commissioner for District A. And on behalf of the Clark County Commission and our chairwoman, Marilyn Kirkpatrick, who is here somewhere, if we could thank her for helping organize this. On behalf of our entire board, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for being here for this important conversation about traffic safety. I'd also like to remind all those who are eligible for CE credits, law enforcement, we have this form at the sign-in desk. If you hadn't signed it, make sure you do that. And everybody else on your way out, if you're eligible for CE credits, we'd be happy to provide those. We're here today to accomplish a few things, and today I think we will. I think we're going to learn about historic trends from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We're going to hear from the Regional Transportation Commission, the Public Department of Transportation, the Nevada Department of Transportation, and Clark County Public Works about what is currently being done at the state and local levels to address traffic safety. We will also focus on future trends and innovations that will lead to reduced injuries and fatalities in Southern Nevada with the Traffic Safety Coalition, Comprehensive Planning, and the UNLV Transportation Research Center. I don't have to tell anyone in this room that as a Western state, we have wide roads, we have long roads, and we have fast roads. This clearly results in increased incidents, many of which can be avoided. As Southern Nevada continues to experience tremendous growth, it is incumbent upon all of us in this room to come together as a united force to combat vehicular and pedestrian fatalities and injuries. Later today, we will hear from Mayor Woodbury, Chairwoman Kirkpatrick, Mayor March, Mayor Goodman, and Mayor Lee about their respective jurisdictions' commitment to working together. And I'm particularly grateful that each of our mayors and chair eagerly accepted my invitation to join us today and to sign our safety pledge behind me here, committing to support projects that promote safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. As someone who worked on transportation and infrastructure issues for the federal government, and as somebody who grew up on these roads, I'm keenly aware of the state of our transportation corridors. And I truly believe that by working together, we can design, engineer, and build safer roads with improved laws that can be more seamlessly enforced. In the room today, we have representation from a half-dozen law enforcement agencies, who I want to thank very much. We have private engineering firms, county and city public works, and comprehensive planning personnel, researchers and educators, members of the public, and members of the media. There is no doubt that together we can enact meaningful change. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our hosts one more time, UNLV, for having us today. I'd like to thank our breakfast sponsor, Locksaw, Aaron Breen and the Metropolitan Police Department for stepping up early in the planning process to make sure this forum is a success. And I'd also like to thank our moderators who will help guide our conversation today. From KNPR, Joe Shaneman, from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Mick Akers, and from News 3, Steve Wolford. And I'd also like to thank everyone in this room for coming together for this important issue as we help make change and move the process forward. And now, I'd like to get the conversation going, and let's get to work. Thank you very much.
I don't like to refer to it as an accident. I feel more like we were a victim of a person who had no regard for human life.
My name is Bridget Echenique.
My name is Jose Echenique, Jr.
My name is Courtney Kaplan.
My name is Stephen Merriweather. I'm the father of Garrett Richard Merriweather, who was killed May 22nd, 2019, at the age of 18 years old, murdered by a speeding drunk driver.
My son left for school. We shared a cup of coffee, and he was thrown from his bike. The impact was so severe that his helmet came off before he landed on the road.
I'm the mother of Levi Echenique. He was our 8-year-old son that we lost.
Not only was this person under the influence, she was actively smoking marijuana while driving in excess of 100 miles per hour.
He was strapped incorrectly, seatbelt, everything. There was As parents, I mean, we did everything that we could.
We're part of a unique club that no one should ever be the part of, no family should ever be part of. There are no words to comfort all of us. There are no words that will take the pain away. We miss our children. We will miss them forever. And no family deserves this. Every 50 minutes, there's a DUI death in the United States. We need more officers, we need stricter laws, we need better penalties. From being a law enforcement officer for 25 years, that I've arrested several people that were drunk. They hadn't been in a wreck yet. And always the same thing said to me, "You're ruining my life." They have no idea. We need more traffic officers, more patrol officers for simply this. We do need stiffer penalties for the individuals that are supplying the alcohol, that are not doing what they're supposed to do. They're consciously making these decisions to get in a car after they were intoxicated, either with narcotics or with alcohol, with no regard to human life.
Every year we see less and less cops on the street, less and less cops around our schools. And that is just unacceptable. The laws are a joke. All because of one decision of one person not caring. If you choose to get behind the wheel and drive impaired and kill someone, there's no vehicular manslaughter, there's no plea deals, second-degree murder.
We need harsher punishments so that people will stop doing this and they will stop driving under the influence. How can we make change unless we have harsher punishments? We didn't lose Levi for no reason. We lost Levi to help facilitate change in this city. And we're dedicated to making sure these laws get changed. People just may think twice about getting behind the wheel impaired if they know they may end up being charged with more severe penalties.
Your family, your friends, it is worth the extra couple seconds for you to slow down and take a breath. I think it comes down to rushing. Everybody's rushing, not leaving time for you to get where you need to go safely. Change is needed, whether it be harsher laws, more units on the road, there's more patrol officers, there's more support for them. We're all in this community together. Most of us love each other and take care of each other, so we need the support to stay safe.
You can be a hero today. Be a hero today and save a life. Don't drink and drive.
It has to stop. And it has to stop today.
Good morning. That's hard to follow, and so I'm going to need a second. But I want to acknowledge some people in the room this morning, and you've just seen them all here. But they have what it takes to be here because they're passionate about this mission. So to my right, to your left, please welcome Bridget and Jose Echenique, Steve Merriweather, and Courtney Kaplan. My name is Jason Lutkowitz. I am the new commander of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's traffic unit. I've been in that role for about a week and a half. As far as experience in traffic, I have none. When I was a patrol officer, I was a very aggressive traffic enforcer. I understand the significance of what the men and women of this unit do. I always had a full car around me. They do it on a motorcycle. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for the men and women who do this job. And as their new commander, I am committed to ensuring that they have what they need to do what they need to do to keep our roadways as safe as possible. So, as Mr. Merriweather said, we make stops, we write tickets, we try to make the point that driving impaired, speeding, running red lights, are not insignificant issues. We don't have accidents, we have collisions, we have crashes, because it's not accidental when you determine that you're a little late for work, so you're going to go 55 in a 45, and that light just barely turned red when I went through it. That's how people die. And I and the men and women that I lead are committed to doing everything in our power to bring those numbers down. And I know my partners at the Nevada Highway Patrol, North Las Vegas, Henderson, all share that same commitment. And today I stand in front of you representing the law enforcement arm, but we and we alone cannot fix this. We cannot arrest our way out of this. We cannot write sites to get through this. This is a community effort. It's going to require the help of engineers. It's going to require the help of county and city entities. It's going to require the help of legislation. It's going to require the help of the judiciary. But together we can make a difference. And if we don't, shame on us. Every one of us needs to be committed to this mission. As far as my experience, I've been on the department for 25 years. As a captain, I've commanded South Central Area Command, the Homicide Sex Crimes Bureau, the Office of Human Resources, most recently the Communications Bureau, and now, as I said, I'm very proud to be where I am as a traffic commander. To my left over here is my partner, Andrew.
Thank you, Captain. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Bennett. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Nevada Office of Traffic Safety. And we are a statewide organization under the Department of Public Safety that our mission every single day is to eliminate serious injuries and fatalities on Nevada's roadways so everyone arrives home safely. And our mission statements between metros and our offices has something that's similar in common. Their mission statement talks about the quality of life. We talk about traffic safety. Having safer roadways, making sure everybody arrives home at the end of the day is a quality of life issue. And that's why collectively between enforcement and education, we're here to set the stage and make sure we're all on the same page for the purpose of the discussion today, provide some data and provide some historical knowledge on what we have and what we hope to do in the realm of traffic safety. For those of you who do not know, our state has adopted since 2009 a goal of 0 fatalities. And the best way that someone has ever explained 0 fatalities to me was every morning when you kiss your loved ones goodbye, you have a reasonable expectation to see them at the end of the day. We unfortunately saw 3 examples of folks who did not get to reach 0 fatalities on that day. And there's thousands of families across our state, across our county, in our cities that understand that all too often that we do not achieve 0 fatalities on a daily basis. We focus on 7 key behaviors in the state of Nevada, and this is echoed through your jurisdictions. Seatbelts, impaired driving, distracted driving, intersection safety, pedestrian safety, motorcycle safety, and speed. For the purposes of today and the conversation, we're going to be providing historical data on these behaviors, understanding that speed is a contributing factor in almost every single fatality that we see. It's a pedestrian safety issue, it's a motorcycle issue, it's an occupant protection issue. And so these are all intertwined, and we hope to provide, again, some data to help us progress the conversation today as we go along. As you can see on the top is the state of Nevada. Today we will be using state data at a county level for data purposes. The lowest year we've had in recent years was 2009 with 209 fatalities on Nevada's roadways. Last year, in 2018, we had a historic record since we've been keeping track in the last decade. We had 331 fatalities on our roadways. That's something that we should not be proud of. We're going in the wrong direction. Even after having a slight dip both at the state and the county level in 2017, we unfortunately had a large increase going again into 2019. But again, as you can see, the state's mission, the county's mission, the city's mission should all be intertwined because we are dealing with the same numbers and the same increase.
As you can see, the Clark County numbers and the state numbers mirror each other. The rise and fall is the same. These county numbers, though, I want to make sure everybody understands. If you've seen Metro's numbers, you're looking at this and you're saying, well, that's not what Metro said. These are the county numbers. They include Las Vegas, they include North Las Vegas, and they include Henderson. So as we go through this presentation, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with the data that we're looking at here. We share the responsibility for traffic safety with the state. We share it with our municipalities in the area. We share it with our legislatures, with our DA's attorneys, our city's attorneys, and with our judicial system. As you can see, our problem is huge. When you look at these numbers, keep in mind, these aren't 50 accidents, right? Many of us have been involved in accidents, and we walked away from them, and we were grateful that we had the chance to do this. People didn't leave these scenes. People didn't get to walk away. That's what we're up against. And that 50 number that you're looking at there for LVMPD, that was as of last week. Today, that number is 54. And there are 2 people in the hospital now that we're praying are going to make it. Otherwise, we'll be sitting at 56 within the next couple of days. This is a significant problem. We have to understand the depth of it to understand how important it is that we address it, and we address it from all angles. What you see here is where these accidents happen. As you can see, there is no safe place anywhere. People drive all over, and people make the same mistakes all over. And this is where people are killed on our roadways. There's some truth to the statement that you can contribute to your likelihood of being victimized by following the three rules of stupid. Rule number 1, you're out at stupid times. Rule number 2, you're out with stupid people. And rule number 3, you're out doing stupid things. This doesn't apply. These people that lost their lives here, a great number of them weren't doing any of those things. They were just trying to go from point A to point B, which every one of us hopes to be able to safely do every time we get in our car. It didn't happen for them. This impacts all of us. We can't look away and say, well, that's not so much a problem for me. I live in a nice neighborhood. I know my neighbors. We don't have violent crime in my neighborhood. We have fatalities on streets where we never had anything happen before, and we quite likely may not ever have anything happen again. But they're still occurring there. We have to understand the magnitude of this problem. This next slide is we call it a heat map. It shows you the concentration of our injury accidents across the valley. We know that there are problem intersections. We police those problem intersections. But we can't police our way out of this problem, as I mentioned before. There has to be fixes. There has to be a change of mindset on the part of the drivers. And that can't just come from us. That has to come from the city attorney and the DA prosecuting the cases and the judges holding the people accountable. And you as citizens talking to your neighbors and your friends and not letting people that you know might have had too much drink to get behind the wheel of the car. As Mr. Merriweather said, and I've arrested drunks before and I've heard it over and over again, you're ruining my life. Look what you're doing to me. You're going to cost me my job. And my response to every one of them was, I'm not doing anything. You've done this to yourself. You've earned it. And I am, by the grace of God, I hope, saving somebody's life today, taking you to jail. That's how I see it. That's how enforcement sees it. But we can't stop them all. We need more help. Andrew?
For the purposes of, again, the conversation today, this is state data that is at the Clark County level. This is not just Metro's data. This is all jurisdictions in Clark County. Going through some of the behaviors that I mentioned earlier, starting off with pedestrian fatalities. And please note the slides that have 2018 data on them are subject to change as it is not final yet. But we wanted to give you some recent data. Again, we've seen a sharp climb in pedestrian fatalities. Our most vulnerable road users are the ones that are taking the brunt of the fatalities. Nevada is one of the only states, and Clark County is one of the only counties in the country that one-third of our overall fatalities are pedestrian related. Okay, we had 100 pedestrian fatalities in the state in 2017. We had, again, 300 or so fatalities, 1/3. That is preventable. When I started in traffic safety in 2009, statewide, we had 29 pedestrian fatalities compared to, again, in 2017 where we had 176 of those happen in Clark County. For motorcycle fatalities, even though it looks like the number is trending down, again, we are having a problem with single vehicle motorcycle crashes and also folks that are failing to yield to motorcycles as well. With pedestrian safety, with motorcycle safety, almost every of our behaviors. It's a two-way street when it comes to making sure everybody arrives home safely at the end of the day. For cyclist fatalities, again, Clark County numbers represent about 70% of the state numbers. Excuse me, folks. They represent about 70% of the state numbers. Last year, in 2018, we had 10 cyclist fatalities statewide, with 7 of those happening in here in Clark County. For unrestrained fatalities, this one is 100% preventable, almost like every other thing that we're talking about here today. So many of these 54 crashes that happened in 2018 are preventable by simply someone wearing their seatbelt. It is unacceptable that we live in a day and age where we have 54 unrestrained fatalities. We could cut our numbers almost by a quarter, 25%, if folks wore their seatbelts. And so again, it's not going to be an education or an enforcement or an engineering. It's getting the community as a whole to understand our message as we leave here today, that we can prevent each and every one of these crashes. Speeding fatalities, again, this graph is a little deceiving. We have a downward trend. Speeding, again, everybody's definition is a little bit different, and for the purposes of today, we're using the state's definition, which is that speeding is, by law, is anything over 1 mile an hour, but that's not what we're counting as speeding related. Speeding is a contributing factor in the fatality. And so again, in 2018, we had 57 speeding related fatalities in Clark County. They can also be impaired, they can also be distracted, they can also be unrestrained, but speeding was a contributing factor in these fatalities. This one I want to quantify as well quite heavily. These are only alcohol-impaired driving fatalities that were tested at a blood alcohol level of 0.08 or more. This does not include marijuana. This does not include polysubstance use. This is only alcohol numbers. Reason we did this, the state, I'll be the first one to admit, we are behind in collecting our data when it comes to marijuana usage and polydrug usage behind the wheel. And so we want to provide you with the facts that we have today, and that is alcohol numbers. Again, someone choosing to get behind the wheel today is unacceptable. There are way too many options for you to get home safely for us to have 62 impaired driving fatalities in 2017. Our data takes about a year between blood results, prosecution for us to be able to talk about it, so that's why this slide only has 2017. I went through those rather quickly, and the reason we wanted to go through those at least was to make sure that we all enter the same conversation with the same priorities. Just this week, I had a presentation at a Rotary Club here in town, and I spent an hour and a half talking about these behaviors. The number one question I received was HOV lanes. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about behaviors that are killing folks. We need to make sure that we have priority straights. Same thing with roundabouts. I hear complaints about roundabouts all the time. Okay, we need to talk about speed. We need to talk about pedestrian safety. We need to talk about impairment, seatbelts, all the behaviors that I had up there. And so that was the purpose of going through those rather quickly. And something that the captain mentioned that I also want to echo is I find myself, slipping in and out of understanding what those data points represent. That was 62 lives lost and 62 families that were forever broken. And all too often we think about it just as a data table, but we all have to understand what that actually represents. And the video was a great example of making sure that we understand that these are lives that were lost and families that were forever broken. The state has taken an approach of the multiple E's. For Metro, they have used 3 E's. The state uses 5 E's, so we settled on 4 today. We have engineering, education, enforcement, and EMS. And I want to go through these briefly real quick. And let's get some crowd participation. The engineers in the room, welcome. Education, if you believe that you're in the part of the education process. Enforcement, and EMS. I'm very happy that we have everybody raising their hands when it comes to all 4 E's. Kudos to the county and everybody that put this together because we have that group of participation. Engineering is our first line of defense. If the roads aren't built safely, if they don't have great speed limits that are reasonable, we're not setting ourselves up for success, but our DOT, our counties, our municipalities do a great job of building safe roads. But engineering is the first line of defense. Education, I think, is the second line of defense. Sessions like this, public service announcements. Education then ends, though, as soon as someone decides to break that behavior. Education ends when someone decides to get behind the wheel impaired, and that's when enforcement takes over. Okay, as soon as someone decides to be unsafe behind the wheel, there's no ad on the radio that's going to get them to slow down or pull over if they're impaired. So at the end of the day, enforcement sometimes is the best education. That citation is going to get a little more through than probably a public service announcement. Our last line of defense is our folks that are in EMS. EMS cannot be understated with the importance of their contribution to traffic safety. The access to healthcare in Southern Nevada and in the state needs to be a priority, because if all else fails between the three, making sure that they have, again, that access to quality healthcare is vital. We want to provide 4 examples real quickly of some of the stuff that we have been doing between our 2 agencies to address some of this. The first one is the DUI strike team. Who's heard of the DUI strike team in the room? Very good. This was an effort started on October 24th. And I want to talk about why we started the DUI strike team, because I believe that it's a great example of good governance. DUI strike team was started after we had 21 fatalities in 10 days around Labor Day, including one of the crashes that we heard about earlier. That was unacceptable that we lost 21 folks in 10 days around a holiday, and most of those involved impaired driving. Our office, Las Vegas Metro Traffic, the Ohio Patrol, Lieutenant Munoz, Lieutenant Munson, and a lot of other folks with their leadership involved as well, came together and said we need to do something, and they created the first multi-agency DUI enforcement team in the history of the state of Nevada in less than 2 months. And for government, that's very, very good. Their impact cannot be understated. This is a map of their 600 arrests. Just last week, they reached 700 so far this year since October 24th. And that's usually 4 cars out there doubled up with 2 officers. Again, making that significant of a progress on top of everything else that is done by every other law enforcement officer in this town, because that can't be understated as well. But this is just an addition to all the other work that's being done. And we're very lucky with our media partners that are here as well that have helped us communicate this effort. This was one of the most publicized efforts in traffic safety in recent history. I also want to take an opportunity and talk about joining forces. Joining forces, for those of you who do not know, is 25 agencies that are funded on overtime by my office, and we provide the opportunity to focus on a specific behavior at a certain time, whether it's speeding, pedestrian safety, impaired driving, and the results are incredible. With 33,000 hours, or almost 34,000 hours funded by my office, it resulted in 51,000 citations, 451 impaired drivers arrested. It also resulted in 250 wanted felons off the roadways, 20 stolen vehicles off of our roadways, and that just goes to show that if traffic's not going to be a priority, violent crime is also in there as well. And basic traffic enforcement leads to violent crime reduction. Don't Kill a Dream, for those familiar with Zero Fatalities, which is my program, it's the state's traffic safety awareness program. We launched a campaign last year talking about not killing a dream. Well, don't kill a dream. And it was the idea that when someone dies, and it was to make the traffic fatality more relatable. We used dreams such as I always wanted to go on a trip. I wanted to surf the North Shore. I wanted to go to Paris. And when someone dies, their dream dies with them. And so this is the first time, after the Impaired campaign, we focused on speed for the first time in the state in recent history with a campaign. You might have seen the Zappos building is completely wrapped with our message. You can see it from the 95 about slowing down. Because again, when we do a speed campaign, it affects cyclists, it affects motorcyclists, it affects everybody. And we were lucky enough to have some folks help us out, including Brendan Gaughan, who just came off an 8th place win at Talladega. A local guy donated his time, so we can't thank him enough for all the work that he's done.
A little bit about what we're trying to do to get the message out, the education portion of this. Our traffic unit is, due to younger, much more savvy people than myself, very active on the social media platforms. We use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're trying to reach the people that are using those methods to communicate. We've got to get this message out. I know we put a map up there, and it showed where 700 DUI arrests have been made in less than a year. Let that number sink in. That is 700 DUI arrests. And that doesn't speak to how many that we didn't get our hands on. And that's one team that did 700 DUI arrests. This is a massive problem, and it's costing lives. We have got to take every step to fix it. Our use of the media platforms, I'm told here that we reach up to 1 million people when we post these videos. That's phenomenal. That is what we need. We've got to get this message out, and we've got to get it out with the passion it deserves. We host community events. Anybody ever heard of Every 15 Minutes? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of every 15 minutes. Phenomenal program. Impacts high school kids. Make sure they understand the significance of what happens when you get behind that wheel. I'm very proud of what we're doing, but there's a whole lot more that needs to be done. Tonight, the Traffic Bureau is hosting an open house. I welcome you to come out, see who we are, what we do, where we do it, get some more information. Lieutenant Munson will be leading that for me. I haven't been here long enough to have my time committed to that yet, so I will not be able to be there. But I want to encourage all of you to please come out and get to know what it is that we're doing. This isn't a law enforcement exclusive problem. I know I'm repeating myself, but I have to repeat myself because it's the truth of this matter. We have got to come together as a team. We've all got to take this personally. This isn't something for somebody else to fix. This isn't something that impacts other people. We have people in this room, and we could probably fill this room very quickly with other people this is impacted. Those people are asking us to make a difference. All of us, not the people who wear uniforms alone. All of us. We all have to do this if we're going to make it work. We can expand our reach numerous times. If you're following a vehicle and that vehicle is weaving in the travel lane, don't just assume it's somebody on their phone. Give us a call. Let us know what you see. If their speed is erratic, give us a call. Let us try to get somebody out there to do a stop on that vehicle. Don't just say, you know what, this guy is nuts. I'm getting away from him. I'm going to get off here where I'll be safe. You're letting that person continue to move, and that person could wind up hurting somebody, and then you're going to have to live with it. So we need this force multiplier. We need the community involved to help us keep these people off the road. We need the help of our judicial and legislative branches. They're here. They're committed to being there. We're all here today for one purpose, and that's to make a difference. And I thank you all very much for being here. At the end of the day, we've got to leave better educated, more engaged, or re-engaged, and empowered to make the difference in traffic safety. We're the ones that are going to save the lives, and I thank you for being here to be a part of it. Andrew's going to put our contact information up there. My business cards have not come in yet, so if I can help you in any way, if I can be of any service to you, write that down. I will be here for the entire event. I will be happy to meet with anybody that would like to meet with me and give you that information, but I want to be accessible to you. I want to be here to help you, so please take that information and let me know if I can be of any help. Thank you.
Very good. And to expand on a few things before we wrap up, you know, one of the things why we wanted to bring up the slide that had the social media post from Metro, that was something that they don't have to do. And they decided to do it in a very unique way that has led to multiple millions of views. That's an enforcement agency that is choosing to get into the education realm. So it's what do you do as an educator, as an engineer, as an enforcement officer, that you can cross the boundaries a little bit and open yourself up to maybe a new idea that could help reduce fatalities. They have one video that has over 1.8 million views on Twitter alone. And it was a very exciting crash, unfortunately, you know, and it had a fancy car. It wasn't just, you know, Lieutenant Munson's face that everybody wanted to click on, but it was the idea that, you know, it was the attempt. And people got, you know, understand that speed is not just a highway factor. You know, it was speeding is happening on our local roadways, and it's a great way to expand the public knowledge about what we are doing and what we are facing. You know, all too often we see, you know, just the news clippets, you know, snippets of either the captain, lieutenant, or even myself or someone from NHP or North Las Vegas, everybody else here, of just us explaining the crash. Sometimes folks need to see that crash, and Metro's done a great job of expanding upon that. So to conclude, to echo what the captain had to say, you know, that is my personal cell phone number. That's my desk phone. These are the numbers that we do answer, and this is our level of commitment to being involved in traffic safety. And we are encouraged to see this partnership, and today is an exciting opportunity to expand upon these relationships. You know, as we get up through the breaks, don't just talk to the folks from your agency. Go meet someone new. It's an opportunity to, again, expand upon what we're trying to achieve here, which is zero fatalities. Thank you so much.
At this time, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Bill Sousa. I apologize, Doctor. If you have not met Bill Sousa, he's an outstanding man. Very intelligent. He's worked very closely with us at Metro to help reduce crime, and he jumped on board to help us with this as well. So thank you, Dr. Sousa, and please enlighten us.
Morning, everyone. Okay, just give me a second here. All right. Thank you all for coming, and on behalf of someone who works here at UNLV, welcome to UNLV. Most of my research is not in traffic or transportation safety. The focus of my research is really on crime policy and ways that police and communities manage crime problems. And there have really been a lot of advances in the last 20, 25 years in the way that police look at crime problems. This is what is known or has come to be known as problem-oriented policing. And in this presentation, I'm going to use some data to demonstrate some potential ways that problem-oriented policing, or simply POP, can be applied to traffic problems. So this slide provides a little background on problem-oriented policing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. For those of you who might be interested, I will be around for the remainder of the morning. But just by way of short background, problem-oriented policing began to emerge in the 1980s as a component of community policing. There are several principles that are attached to problem-oriented policing, and many of the police in the room will be very familiar with this. First, problem-oriented policing is very proactive in nature. So in other words, rather than police always responding to incident after incident after incident, the idea is to identify the problem that's causing the incidents and then take steps to basically resolve the problem before they create new incidents. This, of course, is very relevant to traffic problems as well. The very reason why we are here is to be proactive when it comes to reducing fatalities and reducing collisions on the roadways. Additionally, problem-oriented policing is focused on opportunity and environment rather than offender motivations. People are motivated to commit offenses for all sorts of reasons. And problem-oriented policing sort of acknowledges that it's often very difficult to change someone's motivations. But what police and communities can do is address opportunities and alter environments. And again, this is also very relevant to traffic-related issues as well, because there are many people in this room who, not just on the enforcement side, but are also able to manipulate the environment around some of the intersections that are particularly problematic to potentially reduce problems at those intersections. And a third principle of problem-oriented policing is that it's the idea that crime and other problems concentrate around certain people or places. Problem-oriented policing acknowledges that it's very difficult to eliminate an entire problem, but if you focus resources in specific ways, you can have a very big impact. On that point, I'd like to bring up what has come to be known as the 80-20 rule. It's not so much a rule as it is sort of a guideline, but the 80-20 rule refers to the phenomenon that 20% of some things are generally responsible for about 80% of outcomes. The idea here is that a very small percentage of something is involved in a very large percentage of results. So for example, on the crime side, about 5% of offenders are responsible for about 50% of criminal activity. About 4% of victims endure about 40% of crimes, and about 6% of addresses generate about 60% of calls for service to police. The policy implication behind the 80-20 rule is fairly straightforward. If somehow we're able to identify and manage that small percentage, then there's a possibility of having a very large impact on the overall problem. And indeed, what we've learned over the last 20 years or so is that police and communities can be extremely effective by addressing that small percentage. Here in the Valley, for example, Metro is involved in a lot of hotspots initiatives, and they have demonstrated to be quite successful at reducing crime. You're targeting a very small percentage, and the idea is you're having a larger impact. on crime overall. So the question here is, does traffic-related collisions, do they apply, does the 80-20 principle apply in the same way? So to answer that, we did some analyses of Metro's data for 2018. Now, just for clarification, what I'm presenting on here is just strictly Metro's jurisdiction. We had to make a decision at the point of doing some of the analyses of what database to use, and for several reasons we decided to go with Metro. But the purpose here is we're looking at patterns. And I'll discuss that a bit in a little bit here. But as you can see, in Metro's jurisdiction during 2018, there were about 22,000 crashes, of which 12,000 were injury crashes. And I have 135, that number should be 138, were fatal incidents. These 22,000 crashes occurred at about 5,200 intersections, okay? But they were not evenly distributed across those 5,200 intersections. So in other words, not every intersection that had a crash had 4 crashes, right? It was not, they concentrated on different intersections, and I'll get to that in just a second. Fatalities, however, were widely distributed. As was discussed in the earlier presentation, as you can see on the maps here, there were many intersections that had a fatality. It almost looks like a random pattern. This means that it is very hard to predict where fatalities will occur. Normally, that which is hard to predict is hard to prevent, but this doesn't mean that we can't have an impact on fatalities, as we'll see here in a minute. Because fatalities are widely distributed over many different intersections, it might be useful instead to look at the concentration of injury crashes. So in fact, if we look at the top 100 intersections with the most injury crashes, each one of them had at least 12 injury crashes. This translates to a little less than 2% of intersections in the database that were responsible for 20% of all injury crashes. If you look at the top 50 intersections, they all had 20 or more injury crashes. This translates to 1% of intersections that were responsible for 12% of injury crashes. And the top 20 intersections all had 30 or more injury crashes, which translates to less than 0.5% of intersections in the database that were responsible for about 6% of injury crashes. So we can start to see the 80-20 principle here at work. If we can do something with just that 0.5%, then we can have a fairly large impact on injury crashes. Here are those top 20 intersections. This will be very difficult for you to see, particularly if you're in the back. Let's see if I have a... Uh-oh. Never mind. You will have to trust me. So at the bottom here, we have Nellis Boulevard and Vegas Valley. It had 30 injury crashes. And then up at the top, we have Sahara and Decatur that had 54 crashes. Now, these are injury crashes, right? Injury crashes. This is not all crashes. Sahara and Decatur actually had upwards of 100 collisions during 2018. Actually, they had 97, okay? So these are 54 injury crashes, which is on average over 1 a week, injury crashes, right? Now, one of those was a fatality, right? But think of it this way. Think of it in terms of crime. If at that intersection there was 1 stabbing a week, one of which turned into a homicide, would you walk at that intersection? Probably not, right? So 54 injury crashes. Now, part of that reflects the volume, the sheer volume of traffic at these intersections, but still, we're talking about a significant number. This list, by the way, is not really a surprise to anyone. If I asked anyone in the Traffic Bureau at Metro to list out the top 20 collision intersections in the valley, in their jurisdiction, they would probably give me a list that is pretty similar to this. But the point really isn't to discover which ones are the most problematic. It's just to highlight how problematic they are relative to others. But also, recall that fatalities were widely distributed across the jurisdiction. And this is wrong, but that's okay. This is what happens when you have technology entering things. What you see with the stars, if it were to line up, the top star would line up with Sahara and Decatur up there at the top. These stars are the fatalities. What we can see then is that with these top 20 intersections, a very high percentage of them had a fatality. In other words, a lot of fatalities in Metro's jurisdiction did not occur at these 20 intersections, but these 20 intersections ran a very high risk of having a fatality. Okay, so I'll just illustrate, stress the point. A lot of fatalities did not occur at these 20, but these 20 ran a very high risk of having a fatality. To give a sense of just how high a risk, again, there were roughly 5,200 intersections with a crash in 2018, and again, and 138 fatalities. So overall, the chance of having a fatality at any one of those intersections was less than 2%. So at any intersection that had a collision in 2018, the chance of one having a fatality was less than 2%. But of the top 20 intersections, 7 had a fatality, which is 35%. Of the top 10, 5 had a fatality, 50%. And of the top 5, 4 had a fatality, which is a very limited number. But in any event, 80% of the top 5 intersections had a fatality. Again, illustrating the point that by addressing the small percentage of the most problematic intersections, there's the chances of increasing injury crashes as well as preventing fatalities does go up. Now, just a few points to conclude. The data that we're presenting here, it tells us the where, but it doesn't say the why. Everything that we have learned about problem-oriented policing in the past is that problems are very local, they're very specific. So I suspect that the problem that is giving rise to so many injury crashes at Sahara and Decatur is very different from the problem that gives rise to so many crashes, say, at Harmon and Paradise, which is another problematic intersection. Okay? So what it requires is a fairly in-depth analysis of what is going on at those intersections to determine what the problem is. And of course, related, while this says the where, it doesn't say what to do about it. Knowing what the problem is helps to dictate what the solution and the resolution could possibly be. Again, everything that we know about problem-oriented policing is strategies that are effective often, ironically, don't involve the police much at all. Of course, the police provide an enforcement role, but it's often others who are helping to alter the environment or reduce opportunities that helps to resolve the problems. Again, some of the reasons why we're here. And because I'm an academic, I will state some of the limitations here. Of course, as I said, we're only dealing with Metro's jurisdiction, but the same type of analysis, the same application can be provided with, for county data and state data. I will say on that point that the data are good when it comes to traffic-related data. In so much as all of the information is there. The data are often inputted for specific reasons. They're inputted for record keeping, for example, and it makes some of the analysis a bit of a challenge. And for that, I want to make sure I mention a PhD student who is working with me, Josh Donnelly. To get that number, 5,200 addresses, that quite literally meant sifting through 22,000 cases to match up addresses. It's a bit of a challenge. So as a full professor here at UNLV, I have the ability to volunteer PhD students to do these types of analyses. I don't feel so bad because I had to do it when I did my time, and in a few years when Josh has his PhD, he'll be able to volunteer others himself. So with that, I will conclude.